There's something about this place that makes it right for leatherbacks. And we're getting new national parks. We're teaching people not to take the eggs. We're teaching people not to kill them for meat. We're teaching people to appreciate them as sort of wonderful living things with a special magic about them. And that's, I think, the best we can hope for. We're looking for things that will work in today's world that will keep the leatherbacks around at least till tomorrow.
People make their houses out of cardboard or out of plastic bags or whatever, but they're usually pushed away and they have to build again in another place because the government comes in and plows through here. They'll just plow through their homes if they need to. And the vision that he gave me was a vision of a whole bunch of kids on a hill. And they were all coming down. It was like a sea of kids. And they were all coming down the hill, and they were all smiling, you know. They were all poor, but they hardly had any clothes on, you know. They didn't have any shoes on. But the one thing that I did notice in them is that they were smiling.
Well, with pollution being that it is, with the degradation and the development of the shorelines as it's continuing, with the lack of buffer for nature, with the boats getting more and more populated every day, with our waterways becoming much more polluted, it's very dismal. I hate to be less than optimistic, but with the numbers that are being killed each year and continuing, I would imagine that they would be extinct as a species by the end of this decade or the close of the next decade.
Why I like adventure, why I like danger, because I feel that when you get close to an animal in their own environment, for example, sharks, and you get in a moment of truth when the shark comes very close to you, you really realize that at that split second, if you really have it or you don't. What I mean about this is, if you really don't have it and you really feel strong about the ocean, you will retreat into the shark cage. If you have faith in the way you feel and the way that nature is all about, you capture the moment. So far, I'm still alive.
These are some of the people in the front lines of our battle to save the planet. Their numbers may be few, but their dedication and determination is contagious. We are the team of Assignment Earth, equally determined to tell their stories. An eclectic group of writers, producers, photographers, and editors. Our mission is to focus our cameras on those who are making planet Earth a better place.
Nice piece. Holly, I hear you have an environmental hero.
I have a real interesting story about a man named Peter Pritchard. He's working down in Costa Rica to save the leatherback sea turtle. The most fascinating part about his story and the key is that he's not just determined to save the sea turtle, but he's got a passion for the people of Costa Rica as well. He's a realist. He's not going, let's just block off this beach. It's a long and dangerous trek to the sea for this leatherback turtle hatchling. As it lurches its way across the golden sands of this special beach in Costa Rica, its chances for survival are minimal, perhaps less than 1 in 100. If birds of prey that hungrily circle overhead don't snatch it off the sand, pelicans may very likely scoop it out of the surf.
But there's still quite a lot of yolk in there. If you dissected this animal out, you'd find probably a couple of grams of yolk. And that's the power pack that sees this thing through the first 2 or 3 weeks of life. Because the critical thing here is to escape, to swim out through the breakers, to not be thrown back on shore, swim out till it gets into a current pattern, and if it had to divert from that to look for food, it would it would be a disadvantage.
It's largely due to the efforts of this man that this hatchling gets this far on this particular beach.
We're going to give it an assist. We're going to carry it through the breakers. Not good policy to fool with Mother Nature too much, but let's be sentimental with this one.
He's Dr. Peter Pritchard, indisputably the world's foremost expert on turtles, all types of turtles. And because he's a concerned, knowledgeable turtle expert, his 3.5-kilometer stretch of Sugar Sand Beach was made a national park in June 1991 by the government of Costa Rica.
There's something about this place that makes it right for leatherbacks. The leatherback is the biggest turtle in the world, and this beach has deep sand, it's fronted by deep water, and for some reason, more leatherbacks come here than anywhere else in Costa Rica, and the beach is in fact one of the best, I would say 8 or 10 in the entire world for the leatherback. And it's one of only about 2 major leatherback beaches which you can get to easily.
Playa Grande Beach, as it was originally called, is located on the Pacific coast side of Costa Rica, bordering on Nicaragua. It's now known as Las Balas de Guanacaste Marine National Park, Las Balas meaning turtle in Spanish.
The leatherbacks are abundant here. You can get 198 turtles in a really good night. We haven't yet got 200, but we've had 198. That's good density. But we can't be sure that it will continue. There's too much going on. There are tourists who come here in great numbers. They can be a benefit if they are well guided, if they are well tutored, so they go away as kind of a constituency for turtle conservation, but they can also cause havoc and destruction. I think one remarkable point is the fact that this beach was available as an eco-touristic destination even before scientists had heard of it. About 11 years ago, my friend Tom Stubbs came back from Costa Rica and he said, I was on this beach, Playa Grande, and they had dozens and dozens of leatherbacks. And I said, Playa Grande, I never heard of that. And I checked the literature, no mention in any of the leatherback literature about Playa Grande. And yet when you come down here, you find the Hotel Tamarindo Diria is taking tourists out sort of 10 o'clock at night to see the leatherbacks.
Of course, it doesn't hurt the turtles' cause that Dr. Pritchard is so articulate concerning their fate. His charismatic turtle talk has taken him around the world in a never-ending quest to save as many endangered turtles as possible. He can and will launch into his turtle lectures at the drop of a hat.
This turtle has been out of the water for, I would guess, an hour to an hour and a half. So it has come up to the high part of the beach. It's trying to hit me now, but basically it's been on automatic pilot for all that time. It has come up, it has dug the body pit, it has excavated the egg cavity. Somewhere over here, you'd need to poke with a stick for probably 20 minutes before you even found the eggs. She has disturbed a large area of beach.
As the sun breaks the horizon, the million-year-old ritual for this leatherback draws to an end. Our camera crew has one opportunity to capture the magnificence of this giant reptile as it retreats to the safety of the sea. Just as the over-anxious tourist, we too have become an obstacle to the turtle in an effort to tell its story. An effort we hope will assist in the preservation of this ancient mariner.
Hey, team, that was great. Wonderful.
What do you think? You get some good stuff?
Great, you know what? Beautiful footage, hit on. As soon as she had deep water,
She
just went down to freedom. She was wonderful.
I think next time we'll be out a little deeper. So we can catch her in deeper water. It was a little murky on the inside, but she was beautiful.
Encroachment on the Turtle Beach by land developers is minimal right now, 2 or 3 houses and a small hotel, but it could pose a future threat.
One of the problems here too, one of the big ones, is development. People have had plans for this beach that are not the same as ours. They want to make money off it, they want to buy chunks of land, subdivide, sell to people in Europe, in North America and so on, people who may or may not come here, but they will have lots, and sometime those lots will be built on. And this is not really compatible with long-term continuation of leatherback nesting.
Ecotourism seems to be the answer. Dr. Pritchard understands and extols the economic virtues of ecotourism, but also believes a way must be found to convert tourists from being less of a problem and more of the solution.
The danger is that people, although they at this point like the turtles, indeed love them, that they will love them to death. That uncontrolled, you'd be appalled at what people will do here.
The problem with ecotourism is that many companies are selling ecology. You know, you read their booklets and they sell you turtles, they sell you rainforests, they sell you birds, but they're really just businessmen. They're not really ecologists.
As a fellow biologist, Randall Arouse has helped Dr. Pritchard's efforts to make Las Guelas such a success, particularly after he was named the first director of the Turtle Park. Armed with several mandates, Arouse believes controlling tourists is his first priority.
But the tourists can actually be a lot worse than the poachers. They take pictures, they ride the turtles, they hug the turtles. The guides take eggs out of the nest and everyone has to touch the eggs, and then they put them back in the nest and they contaminate the whole thing. They walk on top of the baby hatchlings because the tourists were just uncontrolled walking all over. So the first thing when I came to this beach was control the tourists. And how can we control the tourists? Well, everyone is required to go on the beach with a guide. And of course, many people show up here on their cars, you know, and we don't have guides. So the first thing is, let's train guides, and we're going to train locals to be guides. And that is one way that we've been able to show them that they can make quite a profit on this beach.
A tribe of howler monkeys live in the trees over the tents in which Arouse, his family, and fellow park workers call home. Life is somewhat rustic for the park director. Recently, the government released the funds to build this wooden structure. It's a combination office where Randall keeps his computer and a dining hall for everyone. Most nights, one can find Randall on the beach with his guides and the tourists, either tagging turtles or counting eggs.
His name is Kiko, and he's one of the locals here. He lives from Matapalo. He used to be a poacher, and now he's been converted to sea turtle conservation. Now he's a guide, and it's clear to him that conserving turtles and being a turtle guide can be far more profitable than the illegal activity of poaching eggs.
This lady on horseback is another local who has gone from turtle poacher to turtle guardian. She's affectionately called Duena Esperanza. Once known as the Queen of the Poachers, she's now known as the Queen of the Park Rangers.
Esperanza is a local lady. She's a lady from Salinas. She has been a poacher for many, many years, an egg poacher. She's a woman probably in her 60s. She's a sturdy woman who, with a machete on her flank, and she'll cut through the bushes ahead of all the men. I mean, she's a leader in the bush trails, if I can build up that picture for you. But the general picture here is a person who knows the turtles really well for a generation because it's been her livelihood. So it takes very little training to take a person like that and have them ride the beach each morning and simply count nests and evaluate whether her colleagues have been at these nests or not, whether these are raided nests or intact nests, and to check them off. And I think she was extremely pleased to become part of the system instead of part of the problem. It gives these people a feeling of self-respect and of recognition when they become part of a national or international effort at whatever level. And in fact, that's probably the most important level of all, right there on the beach, doing good for the turtles.
The ox cart remains a very powerful symbol to the government. It means that while nearly half of Costa Rica's population now lives in urban areas, they still have to deal with the campesinos, or people of the land. Guanacaste province, where the Turtle Beach is located, is composed almost exclusively of these rural, rustic, and sometimes rowdy people. It's taken all of Randall's cajoling and Dr. Pritchard's persuasive abilities to convince the locals that by accepting the Turtle Park, they also get to share the park's benefits.
They're a feisty set of people, and I wouldn't say they all agree. We have some strong supporters. We have people who are questioning anything done by outsiders, whether it be benign or malign. But I think generally there's a groundswell of support because we are trying to keep the beach for them, for Costa Ricans, to keep it wild, as Guanacaste always has been, and we hope always should be, while under the development scenarios, the local people, who are, for the most part, quite poor, would be excluded from their own beaches, their own beachfront areas by subdivision and no trespassing signs and foreigners with money keeping them out.
And his turtles? How will they fare in the future? Well, this gentleman, this environmental hero, who has devoted so much of his life to their survival, believes their ecological glass is still half full, not half empty.
Hell, we're saving leatherbacks here and there. We're getting new national parks. We're teaching people not to take the eggs. We're teaching people not to kill them for meat. We're teaching people to appreciate them as sort of wonderful living things with a special magic about them. And that's, I think, the best we can hope for. We're looking for things that will work in today's world that will keep the leatherbacks around at least till tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll have more problems and we'll need more solutions.
As long as we have people like Peter, we're always going to have solutions.
I think probably the best story I've ever been on was the one that I just covered in Guatemala. And it was the best for me because it affected me the most of any story that I've ever covered. The story that I did is about a woman who lives in the Guatemala city dump, of all places. And strangely enough, there's about 1,000.
For the lucky children of Guatemala, life is not so different than it is in the United States. Learning takes place in a structured environment, and day trips to places like the Presidential Palace in Guatemala City are a common occurrence. But for would-be classmates, life is not the same. They're more concerned with where the next meal is coming from. The army of shoeshine boys in the city have sharpened their survival skills at an early age. They had to. The competition amongst themselves is fierce. Yet they too would have to be considered fortunate when compared to the fate of those who reside in a part of Guatemala known as the Fourth World. It is a smoke-filled pit, full of nearly every form of garbage known to man. However, its content is also the substance that the people of the Fourth World survive on. This is the Guatemala City Dump, home to more than 1,000 people who have formed a subculture that scavenge through the sea of debris, oftentimes competing with vultures for their food.
People make their houses out of cardboard or out of plastic bags or whatever, but they're usually pushed away and they have to build again in another place because the government comes in and plows through here. And they'll just plow through their homes if they need to. There's a stove on the left that they build from whatever they find there on the dump. That's your old-fashioned kitchen.
Kari Ingen was still in high school when she began her missionary work helping orphans in Mexico during her summer vacations. That was nearly 15 years ago. Since that time, she has dedicated her life entirely to serving the needs of the less fortunate. The inspiration she received to open a school for the children in Guatemala's dump was divine.
When God gave me the vision about starting the school and everything, I was real hesitant, and I just didn't really have a real self-assurance in myself, you know. And I rejected God in that area. I said, you know, God, that's not for me. That's not what, you know, I love kids, I love working with kids, but it's a big responsibility, and it means a lot of yourself, and I really don't think I can give that. And I just rejected him and everything, and so he started tapping me on the shoulder, you know, saying, Kari, here I am, you know, I want you to start this school. And after a while, when I knew it was from him, you know, and I really knew it was from God, I said, okay, God, if this is really from you, then prepare me.
For the dump's residents, the workday begins as the first garbage trucks roll up beside their homes. They compete furiously amongst themselves for the best pickings, be it plastic bags, cardboard cartons, or scrap metal. And it's not uncommon for trouble to break out when someone starts picking in another's territory. Machete killings and cardboard homes being burnt to the ground by feuding families is commonplace. As a king is born to the throne, so too are the children born to the dump. Their world is a birthright they never asked for and are the dump's most tragic victims. However, they have come to know an oasis in the middle of their chaotic lives, an oasis known as Mi Refugio, or My Refuge. The school schedule begins at 7:30 in the morning with a devotional time. Then the basic hygiene needs are met as the children wash off the dirt from the dump and prepare for the first meal of the day. Subjects covered are just as you would find in a traditional school, with reading, writing, arithmetic, and science. However, the approach to teaching is unique. The emphasis is not on the grades they receive, but rather on the progress they have made. Kari starts with 8 and 10-year-olds that don't know how to read, write, hold a pencil, or even color. The strategy she uses is to make everything colorful so they can escape the black smoke and all that is depressing down in the dump.
It's not just teaching a class, you know, it's more of being able to give to the child completely. The children have such needs emotionally and physically. They've been either abused physically or sexually or emotionally that it's just traumatized them, and it's caused them trouble in their studies also. So our main emphasis not is in the studying or in the eating. Our main emphasis is having them to know the Lord so that the Lord can heal them of their wounds that they've had in their life.
For the children, the school represents their first, and in many cases, their only chance of escaping a life filled with depression, hunger, as well as physical and emotional abuse. They can now learn a trade, how to read, and make themselves contributors to society. Above all, Kari keeps in mind the vision she had when she first decided to open up Mi Refugio.
The vision that he gave me was a vision of a whole bunch of kids on a hill, and they were all coming down. It was like a sea of kids, and they were all coming down the hill, and they were all smiling, you know. They were all poor, but they hardly had any clothes on, you know. They didn't have any shoes on, but the one thing that I did notice in them is that they were smiling, and that's the blessing that God gave me through that vision, is the kids smiling. And I believe that through the school, through this school that he's provided and all the needs that he's given, that we can see a hope and a future given to these children.
Come. Connie, it's in your eyes. You are the light, a candle in the darkest night. You are the light in their eyes. You are the love given them from God above. You are the love in their eyes. Children of darkness are drawn to the light in your eyes. In your eyes. Connie, it's in your eyes.
That was an incredible experience.
Oh, and I'll never forget Kari.
Or that place.
Brent, can you tell us how you first got involved with those lovable creatures, the manatees, and how you came across Dr. Jesse White?
When we erected the monument to the manatees in the Caloosahatchee, it was actually through Governor Graham, who introduced us then to the famous Dr. Jesse White. This was back in 1982. Dr. White is the world's greatest researcher on manatees. Unfortunately, here's a man who probably knows more about
They're gentle, they're lovable, they're engaging. But above all, the manatees are critically endangered. This is Dr. Jesse White, a world-renowned marine mammal veterinarian who probably knows more about manatees and their habitats than anyone else on Earth. Also more than anyone else, he's responsible for the establishment of 23 manatee sanctuaries around Florida, with his quest to save these benign behemoths beginning here in Crystal River.
These are the backwaters of the River, the big Crystal River. You see how this water is very clear. And manatees come in here about 300 to 500 in the cold weather.
Jesse and his wife Diana are not quite as active with the manatees as they once were, but they're still the main attraction at the famed annual Manatee Festival in Crystal River.
We expect that they'll go extinct within about 10 years. Sometime in our lifetime they will.
It took a near-fatal auto accident in 1987 and a falling out with state and federal wildlife officials to reduce Jesse's role in the mainstream of manatee breeding and protection. While still a perennial optimist, his outlook on the future of his beloved critters is rather gloomy.
Well, with pollution being that it is, with the degradation and the development of the shorelines as it's continuing, with the lack of buffer for nature, with the boats getting more and more populated every day, with our waterways becoming much more polluted, it's very dismal. I hate to be less than optimistic, but with the numbers that are being killed each year and continuing, I would imagine that they would be extinct as a species by the end of this decade or the close of the next decade.
Having labored long and fruitfully in governmental vineyards to preserve the manatees, Jesse now pins his hopes for their survival on the nation's young people.
We're trying through education to enlighten the young of our generation, because the young people, the kids, are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. The adults that are here now, we're sort of set in our ways.
There are many firsts between Jesse and the manatees. Little was known, and even less was being done for these defenseless creatures. when a young and eager veterinarian named Dr. Jesse White became the first marine mammal vet at the Miami Aquarium in 1968. He was first involved with dolphins, at one point charged with caring for those frolicking, fractious creatures who played the role of Flipper in the popular TV series in the late 1960s. Then came a call in 1969 to rescue a manatee which had become trapped in a 6-foot storm drain in Fort Lauderdale. Even under these adverse circumstances, it apparently was love at first sight for Jesse and the bewildered mammal he rescued. When Jesse got the stricken manatee back to the aquarium, he affectionately named his new friend Sewer Sam. He put Sam in with 2 other manatees called Mabel and Bull, and thus began the series of firsts in what has become Jesse's lifelong love affair with these harmless giants with the soulful eyes. He was the first to take blood samples and classify them for other future scientists to use. He was the first to discover that captive manatees required calcium and phosphate in their diets if they were to mate and produce offspring. And he was the first to successfully breed manatees in captivity. In this case, he adjusted the calcium phosphate diets of Bull and Mabel, who had been together at this aquarium since 1957, but never had a baby. As these photos show, Jesse's dietary change resulted in the couple finally producing their first calf, and the first ever born in captivity on May 3, 1975. Because of their fecundity, Bull and Mabel were renamed Romeo and Juliet, and their baby was named Lorelei. They're still at the Miami Aquarium, and Juliet has gone on to breed 15 more babies in captivity. Lorelei is now at Epcot Center and has given birth to several babies of her own. With that successful birth, Jesse went on to create the nation's first manatee captive breeding program, which in itself led to many other firsts.
We have developed so much of the biology of the manatee through the captive breeding program. We've found the gestation period, the time or the year that they become sexually mature, how long it takes them to have a baby, the nutrition that's necessary. So much of their biology we have determined by the captive breeding program, and we can learn much, much more.
As for Sewer Sam, well, Sam went on to more fame and glory, if not an uncertain destiny. In an odd way, it was Sam who was more or less responsible for the rift that eventually developed between Jesse and untutored bureaucrats in Florida's Department of Natural Resources. Dr. White was convinced that manatees bred in captivity could eventually be released to their natural habitat. He saw this program as perhaps the diminishing manatee's last great hope for survival, and probably the only reason to continue the state's underfunded and misunderstood captive breeding program. Jesse decided to use Sewer Sam to prove his point, and enlisted the aid of the great Cousteau to carry out his plan.
Cousteau was doing a special in Crystal River, Blue Cove, and we contacted Cousteau while up here and asked if he'd like to help release this manatee, Sam. He rented a DC-3, and we flew Sewer Sam from the Seaquarium up to Crystal River. And on Crystal River, there we're going to be tomorrow, we released Sewer Sam, and he became Sam. He's still out there, we feel. And that was documented by his special, The Lost Mermaid, in 1971. So Sam did get pretty famous, I think.
When Sam was released, he wore a homing device and was last known to be swimming up the west coast of Florida. He was never seen nor heard from again, but Jesse still firmly believes that Sam is out there somewhere. The artist Tite erected a monument in southwest Florida of Sewer Sam, dedicating it to the life's work of Dr. White. More than 10 years later, it can still be seen in the Caloosahatchee River, which provides sanctuary to one of the world's largest herds of manatees.
Dr. Jesse White is the grandfather of the whole manatee consciousness, and his pioneering work broke through the initial coldness and the initial negative response to the conservation of not only manatees, but of all the species that he has touched.
Because of Sam's disappearance and that of other captively bred manatees who were subsequently released, Florida officials lost faith in the captive breeding program.
The Department of Natural Resources, in cooperation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Department of Interior, have decided that they don't feel that there's any way we can utilize these captive-born babies, or the babies that have come from captive breeding. I feel, and I stand strongly, that we have shown that they can be released to a natural but protected environment in the wild, and they will do good. The only alternative is to let them continue depreciating as a species. And at the attrition rate that we're at now, they are going downhill.
Whatever else they may be, the manatees are so ugly, they're beautiful. The first record of their discovery was by Columbus on one of his voyages in the 1490s. He thought the voluptuous forms he encountered might be the fabled mermaids of the deep, but he noted rather caustically in his log that they weren't very pretty. No one knows how long they live. Jesse estimates about 70 years, nor how many actually survive in Florida's coastal waters. Again, Jesse estimates at between 1,800 and 2,000. With the loss ratio between 100 to 180 per year, the manatees don't reproduce fast enough in the wild to sustain themselves as a species. This point of no return has not been reached as yet, but it will take a lot more manatee sanctuaries like Crystal River, tied to a strong captive breeding program, to reverse what seems to be inevitable extinction. Regrettably, today's society seems too intent on devouring its environment and paving it over in a sea of cement to give any serious consideration to creating proper manatee sanctuaries. That's why Dr. White is putting his faith in saving his critters, as he likes to call them, in our youth.
These kids at 4th and 5th grade have minds are like sponges. They're very open. They haven't been influenced yet by their peers, nor their parents, nor their relatives, and they have an open mind. So if we can get to those kids, I feel that my influence on them may help the future if we can get to a couple of those kids and have them appreciate their environment more. And that's the future.
So Sam, if you're out there, come on home. Along with the children, you may be the last symbol of hope your breed has of being rescued, as you once were, from extinction.
I think Armando has the best assignment of all of us because he gets to cover the Caribbean. What's the latest from down there?
Well, I've been doing the same thing. I live in Tortola, the British Virgin Islands, and I'm still taking my cameras on the water, trying to capture the beauty of the sea, and through that way, telling people one of the first steps about environmental conservation, so they appreciate first how beautiful.
This is the underwater world of Armando Jenick, master diver and master photographer, a man who's combined both skills so consummately that he's become one of our program's principal contributors in underwater photography. It is in the silent depths of the seas, whether among man-eaters or harmless manatees, that Armando reigns supreme. They are all his beloved creatures.
When I'm underwater photographing on film or video, the moment I enjoy the most is when that moment of beauty happens and I happen to be there at the right time. It makes me feel privileged to have the chance to share with nature that small moment.
This is Armando's above-water world, the British Virgin Islands, or BVI as the natives called them. They constantly provide Armando with some of the most spectacular diving and footage in the world. An Argentinian by birth, Armando began his career with the University of Israel, where for 3 years he honed his underwater photography skills in the Red Sea. After roaming the world's oceans for a few more years, he came to live on the lovely island of Tortola in the BVI.
And what I like about being here, that I have access to one of the most beautiful diving places in the world. I do not compare oceans, they're all different. But for what I do and this kind of climate and the access to whales and blue marlin and sharks and all kind of adventures, is a perfect place to be for me.
You have to be resourceful living in these islands, and Armando's pickup truck is a testament to his ability, assembled from various wrecks around the island. Even the radio is a composite of parts, blaring the reggae that helps Armando and his dog Rocky keep in tune with the island beat. In his studio, Armando dedicates a lot of time to maintaining his underwater cameras and housings and fabricating new equipment to help capture the fantastic scenes that the turquoise Tortola waters reflect. To that end, it's virtually a daily odyssey, carrying his gear down to the pier to again submerge himself in search of new imagery.
One of my humble ways to contribute into conservation, the way I see it, is to show people the beauty of the ocean, show them the colors, the magic of the light when it penetrates the blue water and what you found down there. I think that through the value of beauty and showing people how beautiful it is, conservation has a very good chance to follow.
Armando loves his work. It is through photography that he has been able to consummate his relationship with the sea. So many take from its bounty, but Armando takes only pictures of its beauty to inspire all to help preserve it.